Every camera kind of has a color profile. I just assume most of everybody here is going to be shooting on DSLRs or photo. Basically, what you want to do is most DSLRs are saturated. They're basically a lot, especially when you're young, you're like prosumer models or they're consumer models. They're basically designed like your cell phone. Like you can take a great cell phone picture because it takes like all the stuff away from you. It takes, it makes all these choices for you. And so if you get into your DSLR and you get into there's color profiles. And basically what you can do is one thing that I like to do when I was shooting on a DSLR is I would take, there's usually like contrast, sharpness, saturation. And so you just take those and you dial all that back and the detail sharpening that comes in there. And so what it does is it gives you more control over your image. And so when we were talking about this, right here, this is like dynamic range, which is another thing, we could talk about. But so you're in this goalpost and basically it kind of can sometimes expand your goalpost a little bit. But what it really can do is it gives you more options for color grading in post. So if you do want to take your film and you want to apply a LUT to it, or if you want to, boost the highlights or increase the contrast, it just gives you more working room on the final image to go ahead and do that. And it kind of flattening the image, and then you flatten the image, make it look like crap. If you look at it like, but then you add your color to it, and it just looks phenomenal. It really does add that whole extra layer of not only control, but of just pleasability to the eye of what you're able to accomplish with the camera. And then we'll go and talk about dynamic range. When we're talking about the goalposts of the sensor, you've got black, which is no light. You've got white, which is all the light, or all the colors of the rainbow, basically. So in between there's a bunch of little stops of light, like from black to white, there's, a bunch of shades of gray, and so if you say you've got a camera that's 12 stops here, and so you got your whites, or you got your blacks and you got your whites, this is basically no data because there's just nothing that the camera's picking up. And then here it's like, oh my God, your sensor's freaking out because you gave it a nuclear holocaust and it can't get any data. And all between there's these little stops. Every camera, every cell phone has different ones, and what's important about this to know is you just know how far you can get away with in extremes. If you're shooting into an incredibly dark room, but there's a huge window in there, you're gonna know that there's probably no way, unless you add a lot of light, that you can get a profile shot with that window in the background, especially if you have 6 or 7 stops, because the difference between that window and what's in the room is probably somewhere around 10 to 15 stops. And it's just, if you're in a 6 to 8 camera window, you're just not going to be able to cover it all. So you have to make a choice. Do you want to blow out this window? Or do you want to just make the person like in a silhouette? Or do you need to add some light basically to make the difference? So your big window, lots of light, you'd be adding window from this side to be able to, just kind of bring up the room. Or you can just shoot a light. I do it a lot. Just take a light and shoot it straight into the ceiling. It creates bounce and scatters, and it just kind of helps the overall room. So that's one way that I get around having a camera with like lower dynamic range, which is going to be your cell phone or your DSLRs.